Matthew Bell with Alzheimer'sProof.com. Today I want to talk a little bit about the legal foundation of family councils for nursing homes, and a little bit of a specialized topic here. I will have to lay the groundwork for some of this in another video. The reason that I'm jumping in at it here is because of an issue that got brought to my attention. I can tell you this issue resonates with me because at the nursing home my dad was in, and I won't name names here, but at that nursing home, there was a lot of friction between some of the families and the administration of the nursing home. It got to a point where the existence of the family council was challenged. And at that point, I had to do some research and try to point out what the legal foundation for the existence of the family council is, what its rights are, and other things along the lines of that. I'm going to leave it to another video to actually get into a more generalized description of what a family council is. It's similar to a resident council. Essentially, in a nursing home situation, a resident council will be one where a person living in the nursing home can come into the resident council and he or she can join with other people in the council to have a voice in the way things are conducted in the nursing home, to maybe raise issues, to voice concerns, and to kind of express solidarity with one another. A family council is an extension of the resident council. It can simply be an ancillary support structure. So for example, you might have a fully mentally competent individual in a nursing home and also have a family council to just support the resident council. Or you might find that a person whose cognitive capacities have diminished must have a member of his or her family or some other representative advocating for their well-being in that nursing home environment, and the family council is one mechanism for doing that. My general disclaimer here: not only am I not a doctor, I'm not a lawyer, I cannot give you legal advice. This video is not intended to give you any kind of legal advice or certainly not representation of any kind. All I'm doing here is sharing with you some of the research that I've done. It was important in the experiences that I had with my dad in the nursing home he was in, and I expect that I'm probably not the only one to run into that difficulty. So in this video, I'm actually going to explore the federal legal requirement. Now, you should understand that the states also may have something to say about this. That's going to be a much more involved issue. So what I'm talking about here is going to be the federal level regulation that covers and mentions the family council, and we're going to get into that in just a minute. So once again, in a further video, I'll explain what a resident council is at greater length. I'll get into the difference between that and a family council in more detail, but for the time being, this is just going to be a conversation about the federal level regulation that has to do and mentions the family council in a nursing home situation. So just as a preface, I'm going to start off by defining a family council. I know I just said I am going to get more in detail on this in a future video, but for the time being, it's at least good to have a working definition. So a family council, and you can see this is in the corner here, this is just the Google snippet. A family council operates by and for families of persons who live in nursing homes and boarding care homes. Family council participants advocate for the well-being of their relatives by partnering with them in promoting and enhancing quality of daily life. So this can be anything from, I know in the family council I was a participant in, this was anything from, there aren't clean spoons in the dining hall, there aren't enough chairs, there aren't enough wheelchairs to transport residents, there aren't enough people on the floor during this time to that time, this person was sick and came in, this is missing, this item, there's a theft going on and we suspect that it's somebody in the laundry facility. I mean, there's all kinds of things that might be the focus of a family council. And generally speaking, it's going to be, again, as it says in this definition, it kind of resonates, enhancing the quality of daily life. So a lot of it is going to be focused on the policies of the nursing home as they pertain to the actual resident daily life. Now, for this video, I'm actually going to be going to Cornell Law School. This is law.cornell.edu. The actual website is called the Legal Information Institute. The Legal Information Institute has just a wealth of information, and what I'm going to be looking at today is this. It is the Code of Federal Regulations, and that's abbreviated CFR. So the Code of Federal Regulations. And you can see here there's a robust at the very top here, just a robust actual identifier. This is Title 42, the Public Health Chapter, that's number 4, Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services, Department of Health and Human Services, Subchapter G. Subtitle is Standards and Certification, Part 483, requirements for states and long-term care facilities, subpart B, requirements for long-term care facilities, and then of that section 483.10 pertaining to residents' rights. Now that's a mouthful, and so you're going to see it referenced in shorthand, and essentially here it's 42 CFR section 483.10. That funny looking double S there is a section mark. So 42 CFR section 483.10, residents' rights. So residents' rights, and you can see there are a number of subparagraphs there, the little a and then one, and it goes off, and there's a fairly large page, and this is just section 483.10. But essentially, this is defining the scope of the residents' rights. Now, if I go down, so you saw A and B and so on, well, if you go down to the lowercase letter f, you're going to find a subsection that has to do with self-determination. Self-determination, and it says the resident has the right, and I'm looking here at subsection F, the resident has the right to, and the facility must promote and facilitate resident self-determination through support of resident choice, including but not limited to the rights specified in paragraphs F1 through 11 of this section. So in other words, the resident has certain rights and the facility must promote and respect those rights and facilitate self-determination as much as possible. Now this channel, this is why I feel this is an important topic, because the resident is the one who has to sort of cry foul if he or she believes that they're being mistreated, or even if it doesn't rise to that level, if they're just not getting their money's worth in the nursing home, or if they feel like something has to be done, it's going to be the resident who's going to have to complain. And they generally are depending, the nursing home and even some of the local ombudsman organizations in various states are generally waiting for some kind of complaint to be filed from a resident before they can come in and act or do any kind of intermediacy or anything like that. So especially for a person who's cognitively impaired, they've got some kind of dementia, they have Alzheimer's disease, Lewy body dementia, multi-infarct or vascular dementia, they got Parkinson's, they have some problem in terms of their cognition, it's going to limit their ability, number one, to recognize if their rights are being violated, number two, to respond appropriately, and that leads to a number of situations where they can be taken advantage of or end up in a bad circumstance. Now, it may be well true that certain people, just based on their temperament, may be unwilling to voice some of these concerns themselves, and so this is certainly not limited to a person who has Alzheimer's or some other cognitive impairment. A family counsel can be a very helpful and even vital support for a person in a nursing home who might just be a little bit fearful or a little bit shy about expressing complaints and other things. And I should say in fairness that the family counsel doesn't just have to deal with complaints. They can also certainly pat the nursing home on the back where it's doing things correctly, but it becomes a much more important thing in a context where there's some kind of a violation or there's some kind of a problem. Now let's skip down. So if we're in subsection F, what I'm actually going down to now is under subsection F. You saw 1, 2, 3. Well, here is 5. So this is subsection F5. And I'm going to just read a few of these. Okay, now I'm in this general area right here. The resident has a right to organize and participate in resident groups in the facility. The facility must provide a resident or family group. Notice the or. So there's a resident group and there's a family group. And then it says that the facility must provide those groups if they exist, if one exists, you see that, with a private space and take reasonable steps with the approval of the group to make residents and family members aware of upcoming meetings in a timely manner. So they have to participate, they have to provide you with a space to meet, they have to participate insofar as they are helping other residents to be aware that this group exists and that they do have meetings, and if people want to join in, they may. So now look at this section here. Staff, visitors, or other guests may attend the group or family group, the resident group or family group meetings only at the respective group's invitation. So staff and visitors and other guests may only come into the group if the group invites them. So in other words, the administrator of the nursing home cannot simply just force his or her way in. They can't demand to be present. They can't demand to have somebody present to oversee the group or to listen in. They can be invited, they can ask to participate, and if the group allows it and invites them, they may, but they are required to provide the group with a private space, and they may come only at the group's invitation. Now go down to 3, and it says the facility must, in addition to that, provide a staff person who is approved by the resident or family group and the facility, who is responsible for providing assistance and responding to written requests that result from group meetings. So if the group says there are not enough wheelchairs and the group has a written request, the facility must provide some designated individual who's going to receive that request and respond to it. Responding, notice this, providing assistance and responding to written requests. Skipping down to 4, the facility must consider the views of a resident or family group and act promptly upon the grievances and recommendation of such groups concerning issues of resident care and life in the facility. Now, let me just say a few things. First of all, the fact that they must act does not necessarily mean that they must simply obey or simply do exactly what the resident group or family group says. That is not the significance here. However, the fact that they are required by federal regulation to respond means that this is taken seriously. Go down to A now, uppercase A under 4. The facility must be able to demonstrate their response and rationale for their response. And this should not be construed to mean that the facility must implement every recommendation or request of the family or resident group. And that, again, is what I just kind of stated. This is not saying that the resident or family group can dictate to the administration. However, it is also to say that the administration cannot simply ignore the group. The resident has a right to participate in family groups, and the resident has a right to have family members or other representatives meet on their behalf. And so that is the key there for people who may have Alzheimer's or some impairment. The family group becomes even more necessary in order to try to maintain the voice of that resident in the nursing home and to basically make sure that that resident's rights are being taken care of. Remember, we're dealing with subsection on self-determination here under a major heading of residents' rights. So the family council ultimately is designed to help to make sure that each resident, and especially residents who might be impaired, I mean, I'm saying that it's not in the statute here, it's not in the regulation, but I'm saying that it becomes even more important in the case of a cognitively disabled individual. And when you look now, there's one final remark that I'll make here. And it says, the facility must provide a resident or family group if one exists. I got into a situation where it seemed like what the administrator of the nursing home was trying to do is deny that a group existed. And he was essentially saying, I am not going to acknowledge your group. Therefore, I don't have to provide you with a space because no group exists. And so this raises the interesting question of who is it that actually gets to decide whether or not a group exists? Well, I'm going to say if you are a member of a resident or a family council, then your position has got to be, and you got to admit, it's not spelled out explicitly in the regulation, but I think it's implicit, and I think your position has got to be that the families and the residents themselves are the ones who decide whether the group exists or not. If they say a group exists, then one exists. And I'll use as evidence for that the fact that time and again here, it says that the staff may only appear in the group at the group's invitation. It says that the facility must respond and must designate a staff person. It says that they must act promptly, and so on. And so every one of these subpoints seems to be implying very strongly that the families have to be acknowledged. And so it seems ridiculous. It would seem to be a complete undercut to the entire rest of the regulation if the nursing home or the administrator was the one who got to decide if a group exists. So your position as a family or resident council member has got to be that it's you guys who decide whether the group exists. And once that's the case, then we're off and running. The group must be provided with a space. It must be they must have a designated staff person. They must provide assistance and respond to written requests, and so on, and everything that we just mentioned. I hope you don't run into a problem, but I hope that if you do, at least pointing you in the right direction with this statute and kind of walking you through some of the points will be of help to you. Once again, I am not a lawyer, so please, this is not legal advice. I am not giving you anything except just the research that I have done in the past to help you out as an assist. Thank you so much for joining me today. I sincerely hope that you don't need this information because you're in the midst of some kind of a dispute. But if you are, I hope that the information was at least of some help to you. I will have additional helps provided along the same lines that may get into some of the state variations that you might run into or some of the extra legal requirements that might be applicable in your context. My final comment would be if you need advice, you need to consult with some kind of a lawyer in your area who's familiar with this kind of law But if you found something of use in the video, please like the video, subscribe to the channel, click the notification bell to be alerted to new content as it becomes available. I thank you so much for joining me today, and I look forward to seeing you again in another video. Thank you.